Let me paint a picture. See if this sounds familiar.
You send a message in the group chat. It's been 12 minutes, 2 blue ticks, no response. And your brain, without your permission, opens a case file. Did I say something wrong? No, read it again, sounds fine. But maybe the tone was off? Actually, the joke could have landed wrong. Should I send a follow-up? No, that's desperate. But if I don't, wait, they're typing. They stopped typing. Why did they stop typing?
And you're sitting there fully aware that you're spiraling about a text message while simultaneously unable to stop. Because the part of you that knows this is irrational, that part is just watching. It's not driving.
With this one, you're lying in bed at 2:47 a.m. Tomorrow's meeting is at 9. You need sleep. But your brain has decided this is the perfect time to replay a conversation from 3 years ago, complete with a revised script where you say the clever thing you wish you'd said. You play it, rewind, play it again. Each time the satisfaction you're chasing is slightly out of reach. Or, and this one's for the professionals watching, you get a Slack message from your manager. Got a sec? 3 words, that's it. And before you've even replied, your brain has already written your termination letter, calculated your severance, and started drafting LinkedIn posts about new opportunities.
If any of this lands, stay with me, because what I'm about to tell you contradicts everything you've been told about your own mind. You've been told overthinking is a problem, a flaw, something to fix. You've downloaded meditation apps, you've tried just letting it go, you've journaled, you've breathed deeply, and yet here you are, still thinking, still looping, still mentally rehearsing conversations that'll never happen. Here's what nobody tells you. You were never supposed to stop overthinking. You were supposed to learn how to aim it. The same cognitive engine that produces 3 a.m. anxiety spirals, the one that fabricates worst-case scenarios from 3 ambiguous words, is also the engine behind pattern recognition, strategic foresight, creative breakthroughs, and deep empathy. The people who change industries, who see what others miss, who build things that don't exist yet, they're almost all overthinkers. They just learned how to drive the machine instead of being driven by it.
Today, I'm going to show you what overthinking actually is, not as a pathology, not as a character weakness, but as high-performance cognitive hardware you were never given the manual for. By the end of this video, you'll understand
why your brain loops, which of the 5 overthinker types you are, the neurological difference between destructive brooding and constructive reflection, 3 evidence-backed reframes that redirect overthinking into problem-solving, a practical framework you can use the next time your brain won't shut up at 3 a.m.
This isn't about thinking less, it's about thinking differently.
Part 1. The pain.
Before we talk about the superpower, we need to sit with the cost. Because if you don't understand what overthinking is taking from you, you won't have the motivation to redirect it. Let me be specific, not abstract, not it makes you anxious. Let me describe the tax. The time tax. How many hours have you lost to mental rehearsals that led nowhere? Conversations you scripted that never happened, arguments you won in your head that the other person never heard, decisions you delayed because you were still researching the optimal approach, while someone less qualified already shipped version 1 and got the feedback you're still trying to preempt. Overthinking doesn't just steal hours, it steals momentum. Every minute you spend inside your head preparing for a scenario that may never happen is a minute you're not spending in the arena. And here's the cruel irony. The overthinker is often more capable than the person who acts. You see more angles, you anticipate more problems, you understand more nuance, and none of that matters if you never move. The relationship tax. Ask anyone who's close to an overthinker. They'll tell you it's exhausting. Not because the overthinker's a bad person, but because they need constant reassurance. Are you mad at me? Was that okay? What did you mean when you said that? The overthinker isn't trying to be needy, they're trying to resolve uncertainty. But to the partner on the receiving end, it feels like they're constantly being asked to manage someone else's anxiety. And here's what makes it worse. Overthinkers often know they're doing this. So now there are 2 layers of thinking. The original worry plus the meta-worry about being too much for the people around them. You're overthinking about the fact that you overthink. It's a recursion problem.
The identity tax. Over time, overthinking doesn't just affect what you do, it affects who you believe you are. You start to internalize the narrative. I'm just an anxious person. I think too much. I can't make decisions. Other people tell you this and you start to believe it. And once a label becomes an identity, you stop questioning it. You adapt your life around it.
You avoid leadership roles because I overthink decisions. You don't speak up in meetings because I'll just second-guess myself later. You shrink your world to match the diagnosis. That's not adaptation, that's surrender. The cognitive tax, a 2014 study published in Psychoneuroendocrinology, found something brutal. Post-stress rumination predicted greater cortisol reactivity to future stressors. Translation: overthinking doesn't just make this moment worse, it primes your brain to overreact to the next thing too. It's a compounding tax. Each loop makes the next loop more likely and more intense. And a 2008 meta-analysis by Nolen-Hoeksema, Wisco, and Lyubomirsky confirmed what many of us feel intuitively. Chronic rumination is one of the strongest predictors of both anxiety disorders and major depression. This isn't a minor personality quirk. Left unchecked, it rewires your stress response system. So if you've ever felt like your brain is working against you, like you're driving a car with a stuck accelerator, you're not broken. You're trapped in a system that was designed to do one thing and is currently doing the opposite.
Now here's where this video takes a hard turn.
Everything I just described, the time tax, the relationship tax, the identity tax, and the cognitive tax, is real. But here's what's also real. Every single one of these problems comes from the same cognitive architecture that produces pattern recognition, deep empathy, and creative problem solving.
You don't have a defective brain. You have a high-performance processor running consumer-grade software. The rest of this video is about the upgrade.
Part 2. The origin.
To understand why your brain loops, you have to understand what it was built for. And spoiler, it was not built to be happy. Long before smartphones, Slack messages, and group chats, the human brain had one job: survive. And survival meant paying extremely close attention to anything that could cause harm. A rustle in the bushes, a change in weather, the tracks of a predator.
Missing a threat could be fatal. Missing something positive, a pretty sunset, a pleasant sound, almost never was.
Over hundreds of thousands of years, this shaped what neuroscientists now call the negativity bias. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detection system, responds more strongly, more quickly, and more persistently to negative or threatening stimuli than to positive ones.
Even today, when you're physically safe in an air-conditioned room, your brain treats social rejection, criticism, and uncertainty the same way it treated predators on the savannah.
Eye-tracking studies confirm this. When shown emotional scenes, people instinctively fixate on negative details. Memory studies show that negative experiences are encoded with more neural activity. They're literally stored in higher resolution. Your brain prioritizes threat information because, evolutionarily speaking, the cost of missing a threat was infinitely higher than the cost of missing an opportunity.
Now add childhood experience to this equation. People who grew up in environments where mistakes had heavy consequences, where a parent's mood was unpredictable, where approval was conditional, where being blindsided meant emotional pain, learned something adaptive. They learned to mentally rehearse every possible outcome. They learned hypervigilance. This strategy that kept them safe as children, researchers note, turns into a rumination habit in adulthood.
Your overthinking is not a character flaw. It is a survival strategy that outlived its usefulness. You learned to scan for threats in an environment that required it, and now you're scanning for threats in an environment that doesn't. This is why just stop overthinking is terrible advice. You're not dealing with a bad habit, you're dealing with a deeply wired survival circuit that has been reinforced for years, possibly decades.
Loss aversion, another well-documented psychological phenomenon, compounds this. Humans assign roughly twice as much emotional weight to losses as to equivalent gains. Losing $100 hurts about twice as much as finding $100 feels good.
Applied to social life, one ambiguous comment from a friend carries more neural weight than 5 positive ones. Your brain isn't tallying feedback objectively, it's running a threat-weighted algorithm. So when you're lying awake at 2:47 a.m. replaying that conversation, understand this: your brain isn't trying to torture you, it's trying to protect you. It's running a threat simulation that evolution installed because, at some point in our ancestral past, the cost of not simulating threats was death. The problem isn't that the simulation exists. The problem is that nobody taught you when to turn it off, where to aim it, or how to distinguish between a real threat and a phantom one.
Part 3. The science. Here's where the research gets fascinating, because it turns out that overthinking is not one thing. It's at least 2 distinct processes, and confusing them is why most self-help advice fails.
In 2003, researchers Treynor, Gonzalez, and Nolen-Hoeksema published a paper called Rumination Reconsidered in Cognitive Therapy and Research. They identified two fundamentally different types of rumination.
Brooding rumination, passively dwelling on negativity. Why am I like this? What's wrong with me? Why does this always happen? Same thought, same loop, no new information enters, no exit appears. The cognitive equivalent of a stuck record.
Reflection rumination, actively analyzing with the intent to understand and solve. What specifically went wrong? What can I learn from this? What's one step I can take? There's forward motion. There's a product at the end.
Same brain, completely different output.
Psychologists Leonard Martin and Abraham Tesser had already laid the groundwork for this in 1996 with control theory. Their framework suggests that rumination serves a positive function. It's your brain's attempt to close the gap between where you are and where you want to be on important goals. When that gap is unresolved, your mind keeps returning to it, not because it's broken, but because it's working on the problem.
The question isn't whether the processing is happening. The question is whether the processing is moving. Let me give you a concrete example. Say you had a tense conversation with a colleague and it won't be resolved until next week's meeting. Your mind keeps returning to it. Two possible paths.
That was awful. Why am I so bad at confrontation? I always mess these up. They probably think I'm incompetent. What if I get fired? I can't stop thinking about this. It's 3 a.m. and I'm still...
Okay, what exactly went sideways? I interrupted them when they were making a point. Next time I'll wait. I didn't articulate my concern clearly. I should write down the core issue before the meeting. I got defensive. I need to practice stating my position without attacking theirs.
Same situation, same cognitive machinery. One path spirals, one path builds.
Pham and Taylor's 1999 research on mental simulation adds another layer. They found that when people mentally simulate the process of achieving a goal, imagining specific steps, anticipating obstacles, planning responses, their performance improves measurably. But when they only simulate the outcome, visualizing success without the steps, it doesn't work. In fact, it can make things worse. Overthinking, aimed correctly, is essentially process simulation. It's your brain walking through the steps of a future scenario to prepare you for action. When it's aimed at control, trying to guarantee an outcome, eliminate all uncertainty, it fails, because control over the future is impossible. When it's aimed at preparation, it's one of the most powerful cognitive tools you have.
The somatic psychology tradition adds yet another dimension. Your body knows the difference between brooding and reflection before your mind does.
When you're stuck in destructive brooding, internal discomfort increases. Your chest tightens, your jaw clenches, your energy drains. There's constriction with no forward motion. When you're engaged in constructive reflection, something different happens. Constriction eases. A sense of clarity emerges. You feel like you're gaining ground rather than losing it.
Your thoughts are like trains at a station, as one therapist put it. You can stand on the platform and watch them pass, knowing another will arrive just as quickly. Or you can jump on board and be taken on a journey with no destination.
Part 4. The 5 Overwatcher Archetypes. The term overthinker is about as specific as athlete. It tells you a person is active, but not whether they run sprints, swim, or play chess. Same with overthinking. If you don't know which type you are, you'll keep applying the wrong fix.
Based on clinical work and cognitive research, psychology has identified 5 distinct overthinker archetypes. Most people are a blend of 2 or 3, but understanding the profile changes how you approach the problem.
Type 1, the maximizer.
You want the optimal outcome. Not good, not fine, optimal. You research every option, you compare specs, you read reviews, you agonize over decisions because you can see the pros and cons of every path. 3 months in, you're still strategizing while someone less thoughtful has already shipped, iterated, and overtaken you. Your gift? Ambition, creative thinking, willingness to invest serious cognitive effort. No one outworks your planning phase.
Your trap? Premature optimization. You try to perfect your approach before you have any real-world data. You're optimizing a model with no training set. You treat mistakes as failure, when in reality, the only real failure is never starting.
The maximizer needs to learn good enough shipped is better than perfect in your head.
Type 2, the distracted. You sit down to do one thing. Within 5 minutes, you've noticed 3 other things that need attention. Your internal monologue has forks and subforks. Focus is hard, not because you lack discipline, but because your attention filter is unusually porous.
Your gift? Creativity. Leaky filters let in more information, more connections, more dots to connect. Some of the most creative people in history couldn't focus to save their lives. Your trap? Stress snowballs. When essential things don't get done, consequences compound. The late bill becomes a credit hit. The unanswered email becomes a missed opportunity. The problem grows faster than your attention span can handle it.
This type needs structure, not more effort. Tasks broken into 5 to 10-minute completable units. The goal isn't to become focused, it's to make focus less necessary.
Type 3, the ruminator.
You ask why constantly. Why did I fail? Why am I stuck? Why am I not enough? Why does this keep happening? The questions are genuine. You're not performing. You genuinely want to understand.
Your gift? Insight. Most people move through life without interrogating anything. You're willing to sit with hard questions. When redirected, this same drive produces deep analysis, self-awareness, and understanding that others simply don't access.
Your trap? Shame. The why questions, when asked without an exit strategy, become self-indictments rather than investigations. Why am I like this has no good answer. What can I learn from this does.
The ruminator's why drive is a Ferrari engine installed in a car with no steering wheel. The tool isn't broken, the direction is.
Type 4, the worrier. You spend more time thinking about what could go wrong than what could go right. You have dreams, ambitions, things you'd love to pursue, but your brain immediately generates the failure scenarios, every single one. Your gift? Risk assessment. Society desperately needs people who can anticipate what could fail. Every plane you've safely flown on, every bridge you've crossed, every system that worked reliably, someone who thought like you stress-tested it first.
Your trap? Risk paralysis. You accept the risks of inaction as zero, while magnifying the risks of action. The worrier needs purpose that feels bigger than the anxiety, something worth risking the discomfort for.
Type 5, the hopeless. This person feels a pervasive lack of agency. They ruminate on global problems, societal collapse, or the futility of effort. Why try? What's the point?
This type has the strongest correlation with depression and often needs clinical support before cognitive tools can help. If this is you, please prioritize professional help. The tools in this video can supplement treatment, but they don't replace it.
Here's what ties all 5 together. Every single archetype has a genuine strength embedded inside the struggle.
The maximizer is a strategist who hasn't learned when good enough is good enough.
The distracted is a creative who hasn't built the right scaffolding. The ruminator is an analyst who keeps asking the wrong version of the question. The worrier is a risk assessor who's forgotten to factor in the risk of staying still. The problem was never the trait, it was always the steering. Part 5, the 3 reframes that redirect your brain. So how do you actually do this? How do you redirect a cognitive engine that's been running the same loop for years? There are 3 evidence-backed shifts. They take less than a minute each, and they work by changing your relationship with your thoughts, not by eliminating them. Reframe 1. What if? To then what would I do? This is almost embarrassingly simple, but it works at a neurological level. When your brain says, what if I fail, don't argue with it. Don't try to replace it with positive affirmations. Interrupt the loop by asking, then what would I do? Why? Because the what-if question has no answer in the current frame. It just opens a door to progressively worse hypotheticals. What if I bomb this presentation? Leads to, what if they think I'm incompetent? Leads to, what if I lose my job? It's a one-way tunnel into darkness. Then what would I do? Forces your brain to switch tracks. You go from threat generation to contingency planning. Then I'd apologize. Then I'd ask for feedback. Then I'd prepare differently next time. Then I'd survive. A 2023 study published in the cognitive science literature found that the moment of finally deciding during uncertainty isn't about achieving absolute clarity. It's a metacognitive choice. You decide you've deliberated enough. The then what question gives your brain permission to close the file. You've planned, you've prepared, you're done.
Reframe 2. Externalize the noise. Research on cognitive diffusion, a core concept from acceptance and commitment therapy, demonstrates that thoughts lose their grip when you get them out of your head.
A recent 2025 study found that people who can view their thoughts as mental events rather than absolute truths, who can say, I'm having the thought that I'm a failure instead of I'm a failure, are significantly better at using their memories, insights, and self-awareness to solve actual problems.
The mechanism is simple. Inside your skull, a thought feels huge, permanent, and true. On paper, it becomes something you can examine, question, and respond to.
Write it down, every time. Not in a curated journal, in a raw brain dump.
Once it's on paper, you can ask, is that actually what happened? What's the evidence? What are 3 alternative explanations? This is what psychologists call increasing cognitive flexibility. The research explains that people who are more cognitively flexible experience less intense and less long-lasting negative emotional states. The goal isn't to gaslight yourself into thinking everything is fine, it's to unsnap yourself from the conviction that your worst interpretation is the only one.
Reframe 3. Somatic check. Ask your body, not your brain.
This one comes from the body-based psychology tradition, and it's deceptively powerful.
When you catch yourself in a thinking loop, pause. Close your eyes for 5 seconds. Scan your body.
Tight chest, clenched jaw, constricted throat, heavy, draining energy? That's brooding. You're looping without progress. This is the signal to stop, not to think harder, not to try to resolve it. To step away, move your body. The thought will be there when you come back, but you'll return with a different nervous system state.
But here's the counterintuitive part. Sometimes, when you do the somatic check, you'll notice something else. Your shoulders relaxing, your chest opening, a sense of clarity emerging.
That's reflection. That's preparation. That's your brain doing what it was built to do. In this case, let it continue. Give it 10-15 minutes. Your body knows the difference between constructive and destructive thinking before your conscious mind does. Learn to listen.
The framework, your overthinking operating system. Let me give you a concrete 4-question protocol. When you catch yourself in a loop, run through these in order. Don't skip. Question 1. Which overthinker am I right now? Name it. This is maximizer mode. This is worrier mode. Naming creates cognitive distance. You're no longer inside the thought, you're observing the pattern.
Question 2. Is this constructive or destructive? Is there forward motion? Am I moving toward a solution, or am I circling the same fear? Check your body. Tight equals destructive. Easing equals constructive. If destructive, stop, redirect. Use the 5 senses grounding technique. 5 things you see, 4 you feel, 3 you hear, 2 you smell, 1 you taste. It interrupts the loop by anchoring you in the present. Question 3. What's one small step? Not the solution, not the complete plan, one step. I'll draft the email, but not send it. I'll write down 3 possible approaches. Small steps break the illusion that you need the full answer before you can start. Question 4. Is it time to close the file? The metacognition research is clear. Resolution doesn't come from certainty, it comes from deciding you've deliberated enough. Sometimes the most intelligent move is to decide, I've thought about this enough. I'm done. Part 7. Closing. Here's what I want you to take away from this. Overthinking isn't a bug in your operating system. It's a high-performance processor that evolution spent millions of years building, optimized for a world where missing a threat meant death. You inherited hardware designed for the savannah, and you're trying to run 21st century social and professional life on it. Of course it gets stuck. The same brain that can spiral for hours about a punctuation mark in a text message is also the brain that can anticipate market shifts before they happen, read social dynamics with surgical precision, design solutions to problems nobody else has noticed, and build things that have never existed. The difference was never the volume of thinking, it was always the direction. When your thoughts aim to control, to guarantee outcomes, to eliminate uncertainty, you lose. Control is a fantasy. When your thoughts aim to understand, to explore, to prepare, to learn, to grow, they become your sharpest tool. You don't need to think less, you need to steer better. If this resonated, if you saw yourself in the 2:47 a.m. spiral, the group chat silence, the 3-word Slack message, drop a comment. Tell me which overthinker type you are. Maximizer, distracted, ruminator, worrier, or a blend. Subscribe if you want more content that treats your brain like the high-performance machine it is, instead of a problem to be fixed. And send this to someone who's been told their whole life that they think too much. They need to know what they actually have. See you in the next one.